One of the earliest Athenians whose acts belong to known history is Draco, who lived about 600 BC. At that time, the working people of Athens were very unhappy. The laws were not written down, and the judges were very unfair. They almost always decided in favor of their rich friends. At last, everybody in Athens agreed that laws had to be written out, and Draco was asked to help write them. Some old laws were so severe that often people had been put to death for very small offenses. Draco changed these severe laws, and he made new ones a great deal more merciful, and this made the people very fond of him. Even after the laws were written down, the people were not entirely happy. If a man borrowed money and could not pay it back by the right time, the man who had lent the money had the right to take the borrower's house and farm. He could even sell the debtor, his wife, and his children into slavery. On most of the farms near Athens, stone pillars were set up, each of which told that the land on which it stood was mortgaged or pledged for a debt. Many of the farmers and their families had been sold as slaves. In time, it came to be said that Draco's laws were written in blood. Happily, a very wise and good man named Solon was living in Athens. The Athenians turned to him, asking him to make a new set of laws. Rich and poor alike were surprised when they read the new laws. The poor who had lost their farms and houses were to have everything given back to them. Solon thought that they had paid so much interest for so many years that the original debts had been more than paid for, and they should be forgiven. All who had been sold as slaves were to have their freedom, and no one was ever again to be sold into slavery to repay a debt. Those debtors who had not lost everything were to be forgiven about a quarter of the amount they owed. All of this Solon called a shaking off of burdens. Thousands of people felt that heavy burdens had been taken from their shoulders. Solon did another good thing for his people. He gave every citizen a vote in the assembly of the people. The assembly is much like a New England town meeting. There was also a Senate of 400, which proposed laws, but it was the people themselves who either passed or rejected them. So it was the people of Athens who really made their own laws. Under Solon's new laws, Athens came to stand for government by all the people, just as Sparta stood to be government by only a few of the people. When Solon saw that his laws were making the Athenians contented and prosperous, he made them promise not to change them for 10 years. He then went on a long journey. One of the countries he visited was Lydia in Asia Minor. Croesus, the king of Lydia, was called the richest man in the world. He was so famous for being rich that even now you often hear people say that a man is as rich as Croesus. Croesus was very proud of being so rich, and he wished Solon to flatter him. He asked Solon, "Who is the happiest man you have ever known?" He expected the Athenian to say, "You, your majesty." Solon, however, answered, "An Athenian peasant who has never suffered want, who has had a good wife and children, and who died on the battlefield for his country." "Well, who is the next happiest?" asked Croesus. "The next two happiest people I have known," said Solon, "were the sons of a certain priestess of Hera. It was her duty to offer a sacrifice in the temple. When the time came for her to go, the oxen to draw the cart could not be found. So her sons yoked themselves to the ox cart and drew her all the way to the temple. She was so pleased at this that she prayed to Hera to grant her sons the greatest blessings they could have. The mother's prayer was answered, for the sons lay down to sleep in the temple and never waked. They had done their parts well in the world, and they left it without pain or sorrow, beloved and admired by all who knew them." "But," cried Croesus, "do you not think a rich and powerful king like me is happy?" "Ah, Croesus," said Solon, "I call no man happy until he is dead. You are rich, you are king of thousands of people, you live a life of luxury, but none of these things prove you to be happy. When I hear whether or not your life has ended well and nobly, then I shall know whether you are really happy." Years afterwards, when Croesus had lost his kingdom and his wealth, he saw how wise the speech of Solon was. After 10 years of travel, Solon turned to Athens, where he lived in honor until his death.